Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every Friday, so why not press subscribe and the alert button so you can keep up with our adventures.
And if you've got a burning horticultural question for Mr. Ryan, do put it in the comments below and he will answer it in our Monday shorts in under 60 seconds.
Yes, so please do.
Please do.
Yes.
And Stephen, where are we? I'm hearing the tinkling of dulcet tones of water.
Yes, well, indeed. We are in the Williamstown Botanic Gardens in suburban Melbourne, one of the Bayside suburbs, and we're coming to have a look at some of the interesting plants that are growing here.
It is. It's the most wonderful garden. Now, we've made a video at the Geelong Botanic Gardens, which is further around the bay. Williamstown is a bit closer to sort of Melbourne city CBD.
Yep.
But a bit exposed. You might be able to hear the wind. It's a breezy spot right on the ocean.
Yes.
But there's some amazing things here. It's a
beautiful plants, and it dates back 160 odd years, and so there's 160 years worth of collecting and planting and things all in the one space.
Well, without further ado then, let's dive in and find our favourite things.
Yes.
Well, Stephen, one of my favourite things is this patch of Bromeliads. So there's a circle of Moreton Bay figs.
Yep, huge
around
ones.
A dead white man's statue.
Yes.
And I just love Bromeliads.
Yeah, look, they're a great group of plants. They're mainly Central and South America, particularly in the tropical parts. There's some 80 genera included in the family and probably well over 3,000 species.
Wow.
So it is a huge group of plants. And they're very popular here in Victoria, where we have basically frost-free environments for growing in those dry, shady areas. One, because they give you great sculptural effect. And of course, they're one of the few things that will actually flower quite well in those sort of conditions. I think them and clivias are about the only really flowery plants I can think of that will cope with dry shade.
And there's clivia here too. But also, a lot of them do flower in winter. I mean, we're now in early spring, but it's still quite cold. And the spring sort of ephemerals have gone, so we're in that in-between season. But the Bromeliads have such amazing tropical colour. Oh,
they are. They're fabulous plants. And, planted in the right aspect, they basically thrive on neglect. You can more or less forget they're there and they just do their thing.
You can. And there are full sun ones, which love the full sun.
Yeah.
And ones that bloom really any time during the year. So you're always going to get a bromeliad in bloom, I think.
And a huge diversity in size. I mean, there's little tiny bromeliads that only grow an inch or so tall, right up to these enormous things. I mean, Poya Ramundi from the Andes in Peru has the world's biggest inflorescence. It doesn't flower till it's about 80 years old, and then it carks it after flowering, so it dies. It has a flower spike on it that's about 30 feet tall, and I don't remember how many thousand flowers are supposed to be in that particular inflorescence, or how many hundreds of thousands of seeds the plant produces in its once flowering in its lifetime. But it is a remarkable bromeliad, probably not with great garden merit, though, I have to say.
But these do have great garden merit because they're also great companion plants for orchids. So if you're an orchid grower,
exactly,
you can grow bromeliads too.
Well, and they will grow as epiphytes, where they do in the wild, a lot of them. So you can grow them mounted on boards or in hanging baskets, just like you would your orchids. And I have to say, they have probably, in most cases, more interesting foliage than your average orchid.
That is very true.
Yeah, so there you go. Not that I'm demeaning orchids, by the way.
Good. Nor should you, Stephen, right?
Nor would I.
Well, now, Stephen, here's something that takes me back to your drive.
Yes, exactly. The driveway at the nursery, where I do happen to have a plant in this genus planted, which is a Stachyurus. And they're a small genus, I think of about 10 species, both evergreen and deciduous, and they all come from China through into Japan. This one is Stachyurus praecox, which, for those in the know, means early flowered. Praecox is always early, so it's probably a bit preemptive in the blooming regime to other species, and it makes a lovely tiered, layered shrub.
It's very handsome.
I think it's a very elegant plant, and it's underutilised in Australian gardens, certainly. It's reasonably cold hardy. You can grow it in most parts of Europe. I find that in our climate, unless we get a fair bit of light on it, if it's growing in a really shady spot like this one, its foliage tends not to shed properly in the winter and it doesn't colour terribly well. But if it gets enough light, the foliage will go very nice autumnal colours. normally shed, and then you get the flowers through the winter. This is getting right to the end of its season now, but it's a really elegant and attractive shrub that should be used a lot more.
And curiously, given that it looks like it's a delicate woodlander, it's growing underneath a eucalypt tree.
Well, it is. You've got a big Western Australian scarlet flowering gum above it, and there's other big trees quite nearby. So although the garden here is irrigated, it's obviously not in a particularly moist spot.
No.
So it's doing exceedingly well. Normally this one would be about 3/4 fully grown. They normally grow to about the 4 to 5 metre mark. So large shrub, but not quite tree proportions. And yeah, very elegant plant indeed.
Great to see such a great specimen. I've not seen one this big before.
Yes, well, the one in my home garden was fantastic at one point until the possums found it. So now they get stuck into it and give it a hiding.
You need one of those giant owls.
Yes, I need a powerful owl in the garden. Unfortunately, I don't know how you attract one.
Stephen, one of my favourite things is Gunnera. I think from childhood memories of the great gardens of Cornwall where we used to visit as kids, and it would tower over me and I think, what is this amazing thing? I've always loved Gunnera, and you've got an amazing example in your nursery.
I certainly have, and it's interesting because it's been known for decades as probably Gunnera manicata. There were two species, Gunnera manicata and Gunnera tinctoria, which were imported into Britain and other places, I guess, at about the same time. One of them was more hardy than the other. So it was then decided that what was being grown everywhere was manicata, but what actually probably is surviving everywhere, and certainly in England, and this could well be progeny from that, is actually a hybrid. And so it is neither Gunnera manicata nor Gunnera tinctoria, but in fact a hybrid which is now being called Gunnera cryptica, meaning it's been hiding for a long time. This has now been banned in England, so you're allowed to keep it if you've got the grand estate, and every grand estate needs its clump of Gunnera beside its ginormous lake. But you're not allowed to propagate it, you're not allowed to sell it, so the plant is no longer allowed to be in commerce. I remember seeing it growing wild on the sides of roads in Ireland, and so in lots of moist to cooler climates it has become quite thuggish and weedy. I can't imagine it necessarily taking off in Australia in the same way.
I've never seen it anywhere other than in horticultural conditions.
Yeah, I have to say it does self-seed itself all over my nursery, but...
Well, that's different because you've got sprinklers.
Yeah, and it keeps a very damp and cool conditions. And I guess if it is going to go weedy anywhere in Australia, it will be those cool hill station gardens which have natural streams running through them. The Gunnera could very easily, well, it doesn't actually self-seed. The silver eye, which is a little tiny Australian bird, absolutely adores the seeds on Gunnera. So when they're ripe, I'll see my Gunneras rattling with little birds. And so they're obviously eating the berries and then depositing the seeds around. And I find ample babies coming up all around the nursery. So my gut feeling is, I haven't had it proved yet, but my gut feeling is what we're growing in Australia is actually the hybrid cryptica.
Yeah. And obviously it's early spring. This one has only just begun to grow. So when it's fully grown.
It should be up here somewhere above our heads with its enormous, great corrugated leaves.
And I know it's a problem in many parts of the world where it's been introduced, but it is still the most exciting plant, I think. And the fact that it dies down completely puts on all this growth in one growing season. What I've never seen before really is this one has developed really quite a trunk.
Yeah, well, they can with time develop quite a sort of a trunky system underneath them because they keep moving sideways. So these plants have obviously been here for a fair while, and so they are developing that sort of slightly trunky effect with them. Of course, it's not a true trunk. There's no wood in it. It's just a soft, pulpy interior, having cut some of them off over the years. But yeah, I love it as a plant. It's architecturally interesting. It evokes that sort of Victorian age of the exotic and the tropical and what have you. Even though, having said that, it's not actually a tropical plant. It comes from damp, cool bogs. So there you go.
Damp, cool bogs.
Yes, every garden should have one.
Yeah. Well, another thing that we've both loved.
Yes. Well, there's nothing like a good girthy trunk, I've always felt. So here we have...
Steady on, Tiger.
Yeah, here we have our Queensland bottle tree, Brachychiton rupestris, and it's a beautiful specimen. Look at that, it's just wonderful.
I think in all of our botanic wanderings, I think this is the nicest one I've seen.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful specimen, wonderful foliage, nice crown on it. Yes, I think it's a tree with great presence to have in this garden.
And in fact, it has such presence that, as you can see, there's a little fence around it because people are wont to carve their initials into the trunk.
Yeah.
So I think the gardens have had to just try and stop that.
I'd love to know why people carve their initials with a little heart around it to commemorate their love affair with somebody and they're carrying a knife.
Okay, Stephen. But another thing that strikes me about this bottle tree, which comes from an arid part of the
Queensland,
country, hence it can store the water, is right next to it is this wonderful flowering deciduous Prunus.
Prunus glandulosa in its double white flowered form, which is a suckering small shrub, and it flowers its little head off in the spring. You do need to allow it some space so that you can end up with a thicket of it, and you do need to prune it probably every year or every second year to get rid of the older wood out of it, but it's a really pretty little thing. So there you go, Prunus glandulosa. I think Alba Plena is the cultivar name, which means white double.
Well, I was going to say, we did see the pink version in the Melbourne Botanic Gardens. We did a film there a while ago. But I just love the contrast between plants from two incredibly different environments cohabiting in this environment, which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a fabulous thing. And that's one of those old-fashioned things that have kept going in botanic gardens to a large extent. I mean, it was a plant that was very common as a garden plant back in the 1950s, maybe even earlier, but it seemed to die out of popularity, one, because it was deciduous, secondly, because it wasn't native, and so a lot of Australian gardeners didn't use it, and it hung on in lots of places like here at the Williamstown Botanic Gardens, and it's now starting to show itself around the nursery trade again.
Yeah, very pretty thing. Okay, on to the next.
All right, let's go.
Now, Stephen, something else which is perhaps quite familiar to those of us in southern Australia, but perhaps not to our viewers internationally, is this. Look at that.
Isn't that remarkable? This is one of two species in the genus Doryanthes. This is Doryanthes palmeri, the giant spear lily. They're both native to Eastern Australia, mainly up in the New South Wales coastal area. They make fabulous big, bold foliage plants.
Yeah.
And of course, when they do come into flower, they are truly spectacular.
They are. Now, we've seen this a lot because it's used as a volume plant for strong verticals. The flowers are incredible. We've just never been around to catch one in bloom. So the other one, the Gunnera lily, is basically the same inflorescence except it's straight up and all the flowers are at the top.
Yeah, they sit as a sort of cluster at the top, almost like a bouquet.
Whereas this one has this arching tendency. So is it related to lilies?
No, not really. I mean, the Doryanthes are in their own family, the Doryanthaceae, and they're in the class of asparagoids, which includes lilies and everything else.
I'm starting to get lost.
You started me down a tunnel we shouldn't have gone down. But anyhow, they are somewhat isolated in their classification, and they are. Well, they prove that some Australian native plants aren't grey, dry looking things like some of our natives can be. They're tropical looking and they are really quite splendid.
It's the most extraordinary flower. I mean, I will say though, they can look a little messy, because they just do.
Well, they've got their dead flower bracts in amongst the flowers, which is not the prettiest of things, but they'd be very useful if you're doing floral arrangement for St Paul's Cathedral.
Okay, well, this is like a subtext. Let's go on to the next thing.
All right, Matthew, I saw this from a distance and thought I've got to come over and find out what we're looking at. And lo and behold, it's the original green-leafed, white-flowered version of Loropetalum chinensis, which seems to have been completely and utterly overtaken by the pink-flowered purple-leafed versions called Plum Gorgeous and all sorts of other silly names. I have to say, though, I still have a particular soft spot for the white-green version.
Nope. No. I can see why this has faded into botanical obscurity, Stephen, because it's boring.
No, it's not. It's gorgeous. It's layered. It's tiered. From a distance, it looks fantastic.
Well, from a distance, it does. But I must say, up close, no, because the thing about the purple-leafed one is it had I don't know if it retains its leaf because it's deciduous, or is it
No,
semi-deciduous?
they're basically evergreen. This one has obviously had a hard summer last year, so it's actually shed quite a lot of foliage, but it wouldn't normally.
I was going to say, because this looks really scabby, whereas the purple leaf one looks amazing with the purple leaves and then the magenta flowers. So, you know, in terms of placing something in the garden, that's a really striking thing. Whereas this...
Maybe over the top striking, that's the thing. This is a lovely, subtle and beautiful shrub in the witch hazel family.
Oh, I was going to say, the flowers look...
like witch hazel, yeah. So, so Loropetalum is in the witch hazel family. It's a smallish family, but there's some really interesting and attractive garden plants therein.
In the purple leaf variety. Now, how hardy is this? Could you grow this in Europe?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've seen them growing in the Pacific Northwest, in America. They certainly can be grown in sheltered gardens through England and what have you. So it's definitely worth a crack. And I wouldn't say it is sort of 45-degree hardy. So at the other end, it really hates the real heat.
That's centigrade, which is like over 110 Fahrenheit.
So there you go. So it's a great shrub. It's obviously doing reasonably well here, close to the coast.
You think it's a great shrub.
Yeah.
I don't, but actually we'll drop in some footage because I think the gardeners have planted the purple leaf variety.
Yes, the common one that everybody is now planting. Actually, there is one out there, and I haven't seen it around for sale for a while, called Loropetalum chinensis bicolor. Now, it has chocolatey leaves and white flowers.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's far more interesting
Than either
in some ways, and it's less grown than either.
Okay.
Or either.
Talking of which, on to the next.
Yes.
Well, Stephen, perhaps a tree that is not rare and unusual,
No.
in fact, quite common in Melbourne,
Certainly.
is
the crepe myrtle, Lagerstroemia indica. And the main reason I wanted to talk about it is, I don't know what happens to it in other parts of the world, but in Australia, people have this idea that you have to prune your crepe myrtles quite hard every winter to encourage flowering. Now, this tree is unpruned. It has its natural form and shape. It obviously flowered well because I can see the remnants of dozens and dozens of inflorescence all over the top of the tree. And it's got its natural form and beauty. And of course, with crepe myrtles, one of the big important things from my perspective is the stunning bark.
almost as good as arbutus.
Yes, almost as good as arbutus. And in fact, some of them probably would rank with arbutus. This one is just straight indica, which would suggest India as the potential home of it. The whole genus does extend right down through Southeast Asia, supposedly into North Australia, but I've not seen any Australian species in the genus. But this shows its natural beauty and what people should be allowing it to do in their gardens here, instead of ending up with something that looks like a clothes horse or something like that, where it's all chopped off at the top and it loses all of its natural form.
And I must say, one of these in full bloom is a sight to behold. And there is... I used to go past a mature specimen in Melbourne on Victoria Parade, and it was the most extraordinary thing. The colour is so vivid.
Yeah, their flowers can be fantastic. And of course, the other thing with crepe myrtle is, apart from the fact that it makes a nice small tree that's very appropriate for the average suburban garden, is that you get flowers in the summer when not many trees are in bloom.
Yeah.
You also get, in most cases, great autumn foliage, and then you get these stunning trunks.
Yeah. So it's a win-win tree.
Oh, yes.
But right next to it, and probably benefiting from the shelter, is this gorgeous beastie.
Yes, and that is one of the 108 or so species of fuchsia in the world, all of which come from Central America right down into Southern America. And this particular one, arborescens, which means tree-like, but funnily enough, in the wild often grows as an epiphyte in other trees. This one comes from Mexico down into Guatemala. It has an incredibly long flowering period. We're in early spring and it's obviously been in flower pretty well the whole winter. So in a frost-free environment, you can have this flowering for months and months and months.
And it has quite large black berries. And I planted one in a friend's garden and noticed blackbirds, which are introduced in Tasmania, having a good feast on the berries, but we can also eat them too.
Of course we can. They're quite tasty. There's nothing wrong with the odd fuchsia berry when you're walking around the garden.
We made a fuchsia epic, and I think we may actually have eaten the berries.
Yeah, we did down at Geelong.
And we survived to tell the tale.
Yeah,
anyway.
so we're still here.
All right, on to the next in the Williamstown Botanic Gardens.
Let's go.
Well, another thing that stopped both of us in our tracks, I adore this shrub.
Yes, this is Cantua buxifolia. It's a small...
What's the common name? It's
sacred
sacred
flower of the Incas. Yes. Unfortunately, there's a few plants that have that common moniker, but anyhow, it doesn't matter. Cantua is an interesting plant because they're reasonably hardy. They don't go down to very, very low temperatures, but they're reasonably drought tolerant. This particular species has these amazing, brilliant cerise bells with sort of an orangey colour towards the top.
And can I just say, though, looking at that flower, I mean, I know it's not, but it reminds me a little bit of South African flowers, so the ericas that you find in South Africa. However, it also reminds me a little bit of some southwestern Australian flowering shrubs. And also, the flower looks a little bit like an iochroma.
Yes.
Or one of those sort of weirder fuchsias.
Yes.
None of which it is.
None of which it is. It's in Polymonaceae, which is a family that is quite distantly related to any of those things you mentioned. But there you go. And it's a stunning shrub when it's in flower. It is a very boring shrub when it's not.
And not attractive. I hate to say, sacred flower of the Incas, you might be sacred, but you're pretty ugly when you're...
Yeah, it's one of those plants that if you want it in the garden, and I don't see any reason why you shouldn't have it, but you need to plant it somewhere where it will pop when you see it in bloom, but it just disappears into the background the rest of the time. And I have to say it's probably one of the hardest things in my nursery to sell, because as a young plant, you end up with something in perhaps a 6-inch pot or even an 8-inch pot, and you'll have 3 or 4 long stems that just come over and arch down again. And they look awful.
Yeah.
You know, you can't make a neat plant out of it to sell. So it's one of those plants that only its parents would love, but it's definitely worth it if you've got a spot where you can put it in the garden.
But the flowers are stunning, and it's kind of unlike anything. And it's the most vivid sort of magenta with this orange sort of degradé bit to the trumpet of the flower.
And of course there are other colours in Cantua, but this is the most commonly available species.
Well, I'm thrilled because I've only once ever seen it in bloom, and that was the first time I came across it, and I went, what is that thing? So I'm seeing things in this garden for the first time.
Well, I'm very pleased for you. And look, there's also a lovely white version of Cantua in the garden here.
Well, there we are, Stephen.
Yes, we found lots of interesting plants here.
We did.
Things that people should engage with, things that you might never have seen before, even a few common things that perhaps needed a little bit of sort of exposure, and we've done that as well.
We have. Now, I'll put all the links to the Williamstown Botanic Gardens below. It is free to enter, and it's open 24/7, one of the few gardens that doesn't close its gates at night. So do come and have a look if you're in this part of Melbourne. It's a beautiful spot.
It is, and it's, you know, you can go and see the foreshore, you can do other things in Williamstown as well, but you could easily spend half a day here just wandering the garden.
And in fact, you could literally just go across the road and go swimming if it was warm enough, which it's not today.
No, it certainly is not.
But Stephen, hopefully it'll be warm enough next week. What could we be doing?
Oh, who knows? But whatever it is, it'll be something horticultural somewhere in the world. I don't know.
True that. Well, if you want to know what it is, do hit subscribe because we post every week on a Friday.
And don't forget our Monday shorts. So if you've got a question you'd like to ask me, pop it in the comments below and Matthew will read it out. I'll answer the question, and we do that on a Monday.
We do indeed. But until then, we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye all.